eventually you too can play Yakuza 3. Yakuza 3. You too can play Yakuza 3. You ever feel like you can't catch a break? So after building a new PC with my dad and finally overcoming all the problems I outlined in the first video, at last it was time to start streaming. And that's when the problems started up all over again. So I'd be doing something and then all of a sudden the monitors would go black and the fans would whir up to maximum. Strangely enough, if I was running a game, the audio would continue to play. Since the display would shut off and the fans would go into overdrive, we guessed it might be related to the graphics card. Maybe it was overheating. So we installed GPU monitoring software and found that the temperature would hover around 30 to 40 degrees Celsius while idle and around 60 when doing performance-intensive things like running a game. Everything I read online said graphics cards are supposed to be able to handle as high as 80 degrees, and the hottest mine ever got was 73. The problem was also intermittent and couldn't reliably be replicated. Sometimes I'd play a game while simultaneously recording and streaming for 7 hours straight and nothing would go wrong. Other times the computer would be on for all of 5 minutes with nothing running and it would crash. So it was time to take to the internet and see if anyone else was having the same issue. After perusing hours of tech forums with helpful suggestions such as lol get wrecked noob and stop being poor, I found information claiming EVGA's 1070 series graphics cards were known to be defective. My card's a 1060, so maybe being one generation removed hadn't shielded it. But I really didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a new graphics card, and I couldn't even be sure that the card was the problem. So I cataloged which issues would be the most likely to cause this error and started with the easiest fixes first and gradually worked my way down the list. First was updating the graphics drivers, or rather rolling them back multiple versions as I read that the newest and most recent ones had caused problems for some users. That didn't work. Next was to make sure the operating system was up to date and no malware was installed. Check and check. With the simple stuff out of the way, now it was time to start mucking with the innards. If the graphics card was somehow overheating, that could be solved by adding a third cooling fan. We installed another GPU program to manually raise the fan speed and went into the BIOS to check there as well. Okay, what does the error log tell us? Yeah, you're telling me. Alright, so it's not a software problem. Some component in here is misbehaving. Well, hold on, world, because my dad is a 40-year software veteran. We've got spare parts for days, cables, PC components, 2 extra goddamn keyboards. You're not gonna beat us. I listed anything and everything it could possibly be from browsing those tech forums, no matter how esoteric. Someone suggested it could be a problem with the monitors, but that made no sense since 1, why would that cause the fans to speed up? 2, I've used them for years, and 3, they work fine on my Mac. Someone else posted that it could be the connectors on the motherboard where the graphics card is attached, so we moved the card over 1 slot. It could be the PSU cable. We swapped it and also changed multiple other cables one at a time just to be sure. Maybe the hard drive's faulty. Well, no, because it used to be in my dual boot machine and it worked fine there, but screw it, clone it to a new one. Another person suggested it could be the fault of the memory sticks and that we should try removing and then reattaching them one by one. Maybe we needed to underclock by 40 MHz or change the PCIe frequency from 100 to 117. We were spending hours and eventually days trying to solve a problem I was increasingly beginning to suspect was the fault of the graphics card. I had the nagging feeling that I just didn't want to admit it since it would mean another expensive purchase. So I came up with a new idea to confirm whether it was in fact the card. Take the graphics card out and install it in a different PC so we can test whether it specifically is the problem. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be a one-to-one comparison. Despite how many extra doodads and knickknacks my dad has lying around, we couldn't just build a second comparable computer. The test PC was old with hardware more than a decade behind, and we were trying to test a high-performance graphics card. It couldn't even run Yakuza 3, the game that kept crashing on me and the whole reason I upgraded in the first place. It was kind of like putting a rocket engine in a 1976 Ford Pinto. And it crashed alright, but not in the same way. The monitors froze with glitchy green lines all over, the audio cut out, and the fans didn't speed up. So was the graphics card at fault, or was this just an old PC that couldn't handle the stress test we were putting it through? And at this point, we had tried so many things with no resolution and I wasn't getting any work done. I wasn't working on new videos and I wasn't streaming. Instead, I was spending days troubleshooting hardware issues. It was time to just bite the bullet and buy a new graphics card already, which wound up costing $800. As an aside, it was funny when they asked us whether we'd like to pay more to have it delivered later. It arrived, we installed it, I spent the day streaming, everything was fine. Well, what was I supposed to say? How could someone like me be a model? There's no harm in trying, right? What the fuck? So after recovering from my soul leaving my body, I went back to the drawing board. Okay, what haven't we tried yet? What the fuck is left on here to try? Well, the only things we hadn't tried replacing were the motherboard, the CPU, and the power supply. The motherboard and CPU would be more expensive purchases, and we didn't have replacements on hand anyway, so we swapped out the power supply first with an identical one. And it worked. At least it's been a few weeks and it hasn't crashed since. So what did I learn from all this? Well, if at first you don't succeed, try, 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 try again.